damn, man. Get it down, Raw's mess on replay. Jake and Cody laughing, talking our way. Roman's shadow creeping, ruins the whole play. Triple threats faded, mania calls, they say. The garden stomps through, Rex plans in his strut. Tribal chief with bad vibes, tearing it up. MSG crowd, stunned faces in the stands. Cody shakes his head. This again? Damn, man.
What's going on, ladies and gents? Jake, aka Countdown Ended, back here once again, joined by my great friend Cody O'Needy316. What's going on, bud?
What's going on? Can't wait to get into today's discussion. It's going to be a good one.
Yeah, absolutely. I can't wait as well. This is something I've wanted to talk to you about for a little while, and a lot of people tend to bring up in the comments, especially lately, is kayfabe dead? You know, is it actually dead and gone, or do fans still believe in make-believe? We're going to go ahead and break that down today, you and I talking. I always go back to, it's 1980 in Mid-South Wrestling. Now, I heard about this from my step-grandfather. His name was Richard, but everybody called him Dick for short, and we always were saying that we're going to Dick's house, so I called him Dick House. And we were going to Dick's house to watch wrestling, which was the norm when I was maybe 4, I want to say. And he loved Junkyard Dog. That was one of his favorites. And would always tell me about the famous feud with the fabulous Freebirds and how they turned on Kerry Von Erich. And it basically created the biggest feud ever. And doing so, in what was supposed to be a hair versus hair match, they end up blinding Junkyard Dog. And during that time, Cowboy Bill Watts ran Mid-South with an iron fist, and it was done in such a way that you had to keep kayfabe up. So fans, they really cared about their hero, the ultimate babyface, Junkyard Dog. They knew enough about him. They knew that he had a baby on the way. They knew that he where he lived and how he usually operated. So the fans would wait outside his home and wait for updates. So Junkyard Dog played up this blinding for months and months on end until they finally had the famous, cage dog collar match where he revealed to the audience for what was the biggest pop ever then that he was in fact no longer blind and had regained his sight. But this man kept it up to the point where he said he couldn't see his newborn baby. The television crew had him pointing at his baby, but he was actually pointing in the wrong direction. Like they went all out for this, to the point where fans were bringing guns with them to the arena with the word Freebird inscribed on the bullet because they wanted to kill them because they were so angry.
Fucking insane, yeah.
Right? And to envision that and to feel that type of magic and to feel that it's so alive and breathing, they kept kayfabe alive to such an extent. The heels couldn't ride with the baby faces. They couldn't, if they happened to run in the same establishment, they had to start brawling with each other. So if you were out at a Sunday fucking brunch with your family and Kerry Von Erich walks in and you're the Freebirds and like, oh shit, now you got to start toughing, roughing, and fighting with each other until the cops show up. And the cops are in on it enough where they don't know it's predetermined, but they know like, all right, you guys are playing it up a bit, your characters, but it's still real, So people just believed in it. Kayfabe was alive and well for a great reason, because they had to make the audience believe so that they would support these shows. And it was these storylines that people could sink their teeth into and relate to. It was the feeling of being screwed over and over again by, an evil, and you could put in whatever namesake you wanted, your boss, your bad relationship, whatever was going wrong in your life. It was an easy insert to those heels. So the fans ate it up, and it just became a total way of life for these people. And as I said, from traveling on the road onward, they stuck to it like it was religion. And it wasn't all that long ago when The Undertaker retired. We're recording now in the year of 2025, but, back in 2023, The Undertaker was mourning the death of kayfabe. He doesn't like fans' interest in backstage dirt. And he said the difference of where we're at today with talent and where the guys were back then. Guys always protected their backstory in previous eras. There wasn't social media and all that stuff going on. And you kind of brought up a really good point before about, mentioning using real names instead of calling him The Undertaker, calling him Mark Calloway now, and how wrestlers get upset.
And like sometimes like wrestlers, it's either way. Sometimes they will be like, I don't want to be in character all the time, but you always have to refer to me as my stage name. Like,
Yeah,
in what other industry does that happen though, where you always have to refer to someone as their stage name?
exactly. I wouldn't see Tom Cruise and immediately, refer to him as a name from one of his movies. Same thing with Jeremy Renner. I wouldn't be like, look, it's Hawkeye. Maybe people do that, like, oh, if they don't know the star's name, but that you would see more often than not them using their real names. And I feel like today it's frowned upon. We just had it at WrestleMania where Karrion Kross put out a legitimate list of do's and don'ts. Don't go to the hotels. Don't wait at the airports. Don't use wrestlers' real names. And I'm like, the thing is, though, you're online with your real name. You're on Twitter. And half the time you're advertising your upcoming match or show or whatever it is for whatever company. And then the other
your
parts,
handle is your real name.
Exactly,
then,
as well. And then on top of it, you're again not using your character or persona 24/7. There are breaks in there where the reality sinks in, where the things that come out end up being real, and that's what the fans gravitate towards. And I think kayfabe has been dead for a while. Some people they go back to the Montreal screw job.
Take on that with the wrestlers. This seems to be of a more recent thing when they started bitching about people using their real name.
Yeah. I'm not sure how to feel about it. I guess if they're still actively wrestling and they're going by their talent name today, then I guess I could see that's what they want to go by.
Have it both ways, where then they can say, but you can't always expect me to be in character.
Exactly, and then you have to realize there is realism too. So I don't think they should be angry at it. I guess it's a case by case basis, but for the most part, I would say.
But
if you're going or advertising yourself by any other name online, like if your handle or anything is using your real name, and someone approaches you as your real name, not Karrion Kross, and that offends you, then I feel like you don't have a fire in that fight.
Right.
That's my personal take on it. I mean, I guess like I said, it would go case by case. If you're only going by Stone Cold Steve Austin, that's it. That's your name. You're not Steve Williams or none of the. It sure. Then you stick to it, and that's all you're ever being coined as or advertised as.
Fans that troll you saying, "What's up to your?"
Well, The Rock used to get pissed at people calling him Dwayne, but now it's not an issue at all. And that's kind of another side of the coin of it, and that shows the way things adapted. But I remember being at a signing, and The Rock was charging like an obscene amount. It was a country music festival, and like a local fair type thing here. Big country station puts it on once a year, and he was there as like one of like the main attractions. But they wanted back then, it was like I think like $60 or $80 for just the autograph. And I remember like being off of the line, but to the side, and people going ahead, and somebody called him Dwayne, and he was like ready to kick him out of line, and he was so offended, and and it's like that's now where I think he's introduced as Dwayne The Rock Johnson.
That's why I think wrestlers are full of shit when they say, "Don't call us by our government names." Like, you're just bitching the bitch about something.
Yeah, and as I was saying earlier, some people say, oh, well, kayfabe died way back November 9th, 1997, during the Montreal screw job. When Vince McMahon felt he had no other choice, needed to get his championship belt off of Bret Hart, and awarded the match to Shawn Michaels that night via referee screw job. And, he said he took the incident as a personal insult because Bret did not want to lose in Canada. That was his biggest thing. And the term the screw job has been into wrestling ever since. I am of the believer that this was Cornette's original plan, that he was the mastermind of this, because he was the only one that had knowledge of it being done so in another territory. And then he brought it up to Vince, who told Hebner, and then the whole thing played out. Shawn knew, obviously, but point being, I don't feel like kayfabe died then, because the Mr. McMahon character was born. That's when he was born into existence, with Bret screwed Bret, and that's where really
kayfabe was at its peak, because then the Attitude Era, like all that was just building big.
Realism with kayfabe for a new era. And there were real tensions, Brett spitting in Vince's face on camera and making the letters WCW certainly showed that he was upset and it was real. No other talent would be bringing up their biggest competition at this point in time if there wasn't an issue going on. So it blended the two, and it just made them bigger than ever. Then they brought in Tyson, and it just continued to fire on all cylinders. I don't think kayfabe died, like you said. Not even as far back as the CM Punk pipe bomb. I mean, we started off with the Cena while you lay there as uncomfortable as you possibly can be. I used to remember like most of this.
And he was in a rivalry with Cena. And it sounded like it was real too, because they were in a rivalry with each other, and CM Punk.
Yeah. And he was like, I don't hate you, John. I don't even dislike you. I like you. I like you a lot more than most people in the back.
Yeah, he was saying that he likes him probably more than most, and it still lives up today because
the only thing you're better at than I am is kissing Vince McMahon's ass, and still to this day, Cena kisses Vince's ass. He's still defending that man and proclaiming his love for him, knowing the backlash he gets, and he's not playing a heel either. He genuinely feels this way.
And two things live up true to that pipe bomb, and CM Punk's one of his closest people in wrestling is probably Cena, because CM Punk always goes out of his way to talk good about Cena.
And then he brought up the word Dwayne. He did a good ass kisser, always was. He said Dwayne, referring, oops, I'm breaking the fourth wall, when he waved to the camera. He's like, I've grabbed so many imaginary brass rings that it's finally dawned on me that they're completely imaginary. But what this did was blend realism with kayfabe. You didn't know, was this planned? Did it get through? And then he turned it into something else. It was infamous for it being infamous.
Then when Triple H got involved in that whole thing, and little lines like this, this isn't CM Punk talking to Triple H, this is Phil Brooks talking to Paul Levesque, stuff like that. He was actually trying to shit on.
Some people, well, and we'll bring up Jim Ross shortly, but some people wanted to go ahead and say that, well, kayfabe really died at Brawl Out. And that was, of course, AEW's 2023 iteration of All Out. And that was on September 3rd, 2023, Labor Day weekend, and from Chicago, Illinois. They had a great card that night.
I don't want to make this an AEW hate fest, but you know what? I'm going to say this. I don't care if people get mad or cry, whatever. That's your thing. That's the internet. But I think AEW existing killed kayfabe, because AEW was I think the ringleader in let's go out and say it's fake all the time, and let's say it's not real. Well, I shouldn't say the word fake, because that's an awful word to describe pro wrestling.
Yeah.
Anyway.
And then it's a year past what we got at the year prior, right? So it's 2023, and we're a year from Brawl Out, and they still, all that can be talked about was the ripples and the effects of CM Punk. And it all goes back to that actual night, still in Chicago, September 4th, 2022. CM Punk defeats Jon Moxley after their ridiculous Rocky III squash match, coming back from his injured foot.
Oh, God.
And they have a good, decent main event, but of course, that's not what anyone cares about. MJF returns, right? We had all these big triumphant things, but nobody gave a shit. Why? Because of the post-event media scrum. Right away, CM Punk, he took issues and cut a new pipe bomb, one not cleared with his boss, Tony Khan. He goes off about Scott Colton, Colt Cabana, as someone who didn't want to see me at the top, and he proceeds to go on and blast that it's the irresponsible people we call EVPs.
Accused of getting him fired or something, right?
Yeah, they were trying to say that he was trying to have him not work in the company. And that was Hangman Adam Page, cutting that infamous shoot promo line on Punk, saying that he's trying to protect AEW from him. And he's like, they're all stupid guys who think they're in Reseda. And the funny thing is, I mean, it wasn't even a week ago where they're reenacting with Ricochet in the 8-man tag all of the moments from PWG that they used to pull off together. So Punk cutting his nostalgic, post-event media scrum Brawl Out promo here. It led to them getting in a huge altercation in the back. Kenny Omega got bit. Poor Larry got his tooth knocked out, and some people got fired, some people got stripped of titles, but it was embarrassing. But it's all anyone cared about. Why? Because it was real. It was real. The hate was real. The story was real. All of it was real. And that's what fans want in this current day and age, you know? And Jim Ross even hilariously claims, you know, CM Punk had Jack Perry scared shitless before their AEW All-In fight, because people say that's when kayfabe died. You know, they tried to bring it back. They tried to make it happen. But we know at that year's All-In, Wembley Stadium. And there they are, August 27th. They've got 81,000 reported fans in attendance, even though the turnstile said 72,265. They have a huge packed house, but all anyone can talk or think about is the Jack Perry CM Punk incident that led to suspensions and firings and Tony fearing for his life. You know, it
Here's
was
the
real
thing,
class,
like
Crimea
not to
River.
compare AEW and WWE in this video, but like here's the things about that. With different wrestling companies with kayfabe, WWE would have been like, all right, now let's build something out of this. All of you are going to have to work together. You're adults, and we're going to try to make this as real as possible. AEW had to go publicly announce, yeah, there was a real fight, not part of the show or anything. We can't have them near each other, all that shit. See, stuff like that is what ruins kayfabe, like you said.
Yeah, but I don't point to any of these moments like people do, saying that that's where kayfabe died. You know, Jim Ross saying that it was embarrassing, and he's right. He said, I don't give a shit who's right, who's wrong, who's in the right doesn't matter. He said, hold your angst and let it go. He said, CM Punk is a great friend of mine. We still talk daily. He was wrong that day by continuing to stand there and push buttons. Jack Perry was scared shitless. He wouldn't admit it because that's not macho, but you know, come on. And he's right. Yep. And it didn't need to happen, but it wasn't the death
because
of kayfabe.
Realistically, I saw people talk about just off topic a little, like how CM Punk was a bad UFC fighter, but I'm like, he's still trained in MMA, because realistically CM Punk can tear Jack Perry's ass apart. So like Jack Perry wanted nothing to do with him.
See, I like to look at this from a different angle, as where fans are now saying how kayfabe's been dead for years. I think that it's just it ever and further evolved. It changed from what it was back in the 1980s when Junkyard Dog had to hide in his house, as we mentioned earlier. It evolved from what it was in the late 90s, where people still couldn't, you know, be seen traveling together with fans with Polaroid cameras, you know, at the ready. But the invention of
they
cell
used to do like heel and face buses.
Yeah.
Like,
oh, yeah. They split the rosters up to keep people away as much as possible, to stick to storylines. And now, you know, people travel together as groups. People say, oh, look at Roman Reigns and Braun Strowman
together.
Yeah. Roman and Braun were having that, I'm not finished with you yet. Ambulance truck flipping, you know, feud with each other.
But traveling together at the same time.
At the same time, taking photos in front of, you know, ancient wonders and pyramids and things of the like.
Yep.
So I think it just evolved. I don't think kayfabe died at any point. I think it changed.
Like,
WWE used to have the thing with tout. Remember, we're going to have the wrestlers put out video messages with the fans, and that became more about their
like recently,
non-wrestling side.
Like Jay and Braun Breaker, I know we're having a feud, but they were posting workout videos at the gym together, stuff like that.
Well, that's a great point, too. And here's the thing. When I was growing up, if I wanted to see more of Stone Cold Steve Austin in my teen years, if he wasn't on wrestling, it was a rarity to catch him on anything else. And especially as their popularity soared, he was, you know, on a lot of media. He would do the Tonight Show type, you know, circuit. And so I'd stay up to watch those things. It wasn't DVR'd. If I wanted more from Stone Cold, I had to look out for articles or interviews. I had to seek things out. Nowadays, with social media giving everyone an equal voice and an equal share of the attention pie, maybe more people get views than others, but my tweet has the possibility of being seen as much as anybody else's, essentially. You know, and the thing is that you basically, you gave access to everyone. Celebrities are no longer held at a higher standard because they're on an equal playing field with, because I can contact The Rock now. He may not answer me, but I can still tweet at him. You know, I can message him. There are ways of eliminating a hierarchy, I would say, that have changed how people interact with celebrities. And what
you
are celebrities defined
contact
as?
them. You can find a way to contact them, but they're not going to answer you most likely. Like you can, Instagram has DMs. You can try to reach
but there
out
is a
to them.
possibility, and people do answer occasionally, and there is that, again, and people not only presenting their character side but bringing their real side into play happened at a gradual pace. WWE more and more started to push social media and push the boundaries of realism and showing what these people are doing in their lives and putting out podcasts and behind the scenes footage.
Like
and
they're doing a new show now, right?
And the Unreal series. And I don't even think that kills kayfabe, because what it is now is, I think kayfabe has fully evolved. Pun intended, but I really do. I feel like it has changed in such a way that people love silly moments just as much as the serious ones. Fans will play into R-Truth's delusions just as much as they will seeing Cody finish his story. Fans will accept...
And you want to know about that show.
Yeah.
Sorry to cut you off, but you
No.
want to know about that show. But I don't think they're going to show you all the real, like they're saying it's going to be real, because I think that show is still going to be scripted a little bit.
Absolutely, and it's still edited, it's still formulated, it's still planned out. There's, like people saw in the background on the whiteboards, the tentative plans of WrestleMania. And, if they didn't want that getting out, it wouldn't have been edited and put in the trailer as such. They wanted fans to see what was going out.
You're going to see,
like, part of the plan.
Last year's rivalries, you're probably going to see stuff like CM Punk and Drew interacting about their storyline, Liv Morgan and Rhea Ripley talking to each other to plan out a storyline. But it's still a scripted series that, like you said, is planned out.
Absolutely.
So it's not really...
It has a director. It has people telling people where to stand, how to be filmed. Hey, guess what? We're going to shoot this again. They even said they had to reshoot several of the unplanned real scenes to change lighting and stuff. So it's still... But this falls in line with, the fans can get behind El Grande Americano and not believe that it's Chad Gable, just as much as they can that Chad's dead.
Because it's not Chad
during
Gable,
the Wyatt. It's not, and the Wyatt Six didn't kill him; they just incapacitated him. But their debut, the fans got huge into. The fans still enjoy some spooky supernatural things, and maybe some things toe the line too far. But I think fans are just in on the fun now. They know it's fake. They know wrestling is predetermined, and they're here for the ride, whatever you give them. And that's why they chant nowadays. That instead of saying, this is awesome, we hear holy shit chants. And instead of, getting a visceral reaction, we hear baby faces in peril being told to be destroyed one more time.
It's the same fans that complain about how kayfabe is dead. It's the same people that go on the internet and pretend to play Booker and say, well, this heel needs to win this match to build up their momentum. This person needs to do that. But like, you want it to be real, but you want to play script writer.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? So like, you can't have it both ways.
You could say that kayfabe was dead when Vince McMahon faked his death and then had to come right back, and the fans, revolted against that. But some fans were along for the ride thinking he was gone. People called the police. People called, hospitals. You had stocks affected. The Rock.
So what about saying
it is a Hollywood wrestler? People know this. He's not seen as an actor first and an athlete second anymore. He's seen as a wrestler and an actor, and it's on equal footing finally. People show respect. The Montreal Screwjob still to this day probably isn't, but could have been a work. All of it is showing because fans are just in the act now.
And if the Montreal Screwjob is a work, they're never going to tell you.
And here's the thing, I think the difference is now you don't have to pull the wool over fans' eyes. You don't have to keep the act going 24/7, because the difference is now fans are willing to participate in the kayfabe. They know, like I said, it's scripted, but they want to play along. They're going to cheer the positive when they go the negative.
Go to wrestlers meet and greets at like the WrestleMania event, WrestleMania World or whatever it's called, WrestleMania Access, something like that.
WWE World.
They know WWE World. Okay, that's what it's called. But like when you go and meet your favorite wrestlers, like the faces are going to be all nice to you, and like Dom, Liv, just for an example, like them, shout out to them. But like they're gonna trash on you because they're heels. They play up their characters there a little.
Exactly.
So they're gonna
Dom
be like,
just went
"Oh, you
viral.
loser."
He just went viral for having that short about the woman comes up and she's like, "Oh, I just got engaged," and he's like, "Oh, that's great, but it's not Liv." You know, and like you said, he's playing along with the story. It's funny,
Perfect.
but the kayfabe is
Like,
still
if I met
alive,
them,
and people are
I
playing
would want
along.
them to see. Here's the thing with me: if I went up to them to meet them, I would want them to shit on me. Probably.
Yeah,
I think that would be cool.
a
I'm
lot
sure
of
you would
fans
too.
want that. I mean, just as they chant John Cena sucks, they cheer for other heels that are cool and like a Braun Breaker type. You know, that's why I said before
Because
they
I know what I'm
cheered
getting
on
myself
Sami
into.
Zayn
Like,
getting hit one more time.
if I go meet MJF, you damn well know what you're getting yourself in for. You're gonna get shit on.
Exactly, and
That's
he's
it.
one that
And
tries
I
to
would
blur
enjoy.
the reality of it and present himself as in
He's good with
kayfabe
that.
24/7. But that's his choice.
Dominic and MJF are probably the two top that are like really good at just staying in that character no matter what. They're both old school with that, and I appreciate that about them as well.
I
Like,
mean,
keep
people are knowing that Seth Rollins has his training school. Same does Aleister Black. They know that they're training the future stars. You know, and you can look up and Google tutorials on how to perform wrestling moves. You know, the internet, as I said before, bridged a gap in such a way that it became almost impossible to ignore the lack of reality in wrestling. You know, they had to kind of make some things a wink and a nod and had to have some things still try to pull the wool over fans' eyes. You know, there were moments that create drama, but it was the realism, as I mentioned before, that people still focus on the most. You have your highest rated attendance ever in history. You're breaking records, but all the fans can talk about is Jack Perry getting goozled by CM Punk because Cry Me a River, it's real glass. You know, the fans enjoy the realism. I think that's what works the best. Knowing that Cody's dad got screwed
in a way,
and was treated in such a
you
way.
can have both arguments with the AEW showing the footage like on the show, because I guess
They
tried to say it was a part of
capitalize
the
on the
storyline.
realism in the lines of kayfabe, and the
they
fans
ended up
revolted
trying
against
that.
it. Since they've aired that
Yeah.
footage, they have gone down year over year,
Which-
show to show, considerably.
What do
with
you think about
viewership.
them airing the footage? Because
I thought it was a terrible idea. I said it loud and clear then that they shouldn't have paid any attention to it, because all it did was publicize a person that is no longer in your company. And he didn't look bad in the footage. He looked like he was in the right. He got approached. He got fucked with. And he said, seriously, why do we have to have this problem? And then he gets in on him, and then he grabs him and chokes him a little because he's a little bitch. Had to happen.
And that's exactly what CM Punk said. So, like,
so all they did was prove
the
CM Punk right. They put it out in response to him having that podcast, before his WrestleMania return. Even though he was injured, he still played a huge part in most of the year. And they capitalized on Punk what AEW could not. They made his star rise continually, and they used the momentum and realism. And if you notice, the WWE audience didn't care when he said any quip towards AEW. Most people didn't. It wasn't what they were there to see.
Like,
they were there to see CM Punk.
There's actually people sitting on this side of the stuff like that.
Yeah, those comments. I still work with children, and he's let out a bunch of lines since, and each one, but we saw fans reject Roman Reigns for how long, and then he finally came back, and they got the idea right. Oh shit, let's turn him heel, like every single podcaster, fan, and critic alike said
crazy.
For years.
Like, I've seen a lot of podcasts saying Roman Reigns is the worst thing for television. He's going to kill WWE TV. And all these people today are like, Roman Reigns is my favorite part of WWE television. He is my favorite wrestler. Look at how times change.
And what changed? His presentation. They bit on some of the realism. They took in the negativity that the fans had presented him, and he turned out arrogant in a way to invigorate his relationship with them all over again. He was too cool to listen to their bullshit at this point, and now it just rolled off of him, and people found that to be such a appetizing aura that they couldn't help but cheer for the bad guy. The bloodline was cool. They were funny.
The aura.
They were popular. They were hip. It worked.
cinema.
It made the modern wrestling fan, fall back in love with long-term storytelling. And that's when we started acknowledging not just the Bloodline story, but other stories. Kevin Owens through narrative, and how that connected over multiple years. Him and Sami Zayn's continued rivalry. The different iterations and turns of Brock Lesnar. We've had a ton of different narratives that have gone and stretched over the last few years
because the
because
Roman
of realism.
And like the Kevin Owens especially is a great point for realism because he's like a relatable heel that really has done nothing.
He's a
wrong.
justified
Like,
heel. The best
Yes,
aspects to a
because
good bad guy are relatable and
it's a domino
realistic
effect
traits.
with the Roman and Kevin Owens rivalry because then Cody Rhodes came into the picture. Then Kevin Owens had to bust his ass always defending Cody Rhodes just for Cody Rhodes to team with the guy.
Exactly.
And then it got Kevin Owens frustrated where he ended up snapping at Cody Rhodes because when Kevin Owens needed his help, Cody Rhodes wasn't there to be found like he helped Roman.
Yep.
So then it was a domino effect where
exactly, and it
Randy
played out through many years
Cody
because
Rhodes,
of all the
and it
times
started-
face Kevin Owens took out and tried to stop the Bloodline. There was no one there to help him, and now you're teaming with him. Now you're siding with him after we did everything we could to help you finish your story and take him down. I took bullets for you. Do you not remember
which
the
got
Royal
mad
Rumble?
at Randy because Randy's he was telling Randy like you had to go through the same shit I had to because of them, and look at they took you out, and you're gonna be all buddy with Cody Rhodes still.
And look at how the fans recorded that moment themselves. They were the cameramen.
Yep.
They were the reporters.
Yes, perfect.
They were the analysts. Why? Because it felt real. All
and
of it
WWE
made
knew
sense.
people were going to record them.
Exactly. They knew that it would
Wrestlers
play
leaving.
out in front of fans' eyes. People would be streaming it, recording it, broadcasting it, and it worked perfectly. They played to their strengths because now there's no WWE cameras around, so this was just them interacting, and fucking Kevin Owens is a prick. He couldn't take it. He snapped on the real Cody. Like, what the hell? Like, why would he do? And fans are like, oh my God. And it looked like he was really beating the shit out of him, too. I thought that was superb. Again, they blur the lines of reality with kayfabe. And I think that's why the evolution of such is why I feel kayfabe is not dead. It's just agreed upon now. Fans don't mind buying in. They know Roman Reigns is not really a tribal chief. He's not really
going to
the
go
head
home
of the
to his
family.
family and yell at everyone to acknowledge him.
Exactly.
Like that.
But we buy into the character because we like the person so much that the character falls suit. And I think that also really he fed into the narrative. He kept kayfabe going with his story by the way he interacted with people online while still doing, positive things, going out and doing charity things and all of that nature in the background. But on the presented level, he was being a heel. And fans knew, the guy that suffered from leukemia that we cheered on is not really a bad guy. But we like this character. And it was said for years, oh, they need to turn Roman. They need to turn Roman. And as soon as they did, that SummerSlam return, he was over. That's why I said wrestling promotions still try to work fans. They still try to have us believe when necessary. But I think they produce and book in such a way now, knowing that, hey, kayfabe isn't dead. It's just a little different.
Yep. I agree. I think my only issue and takeaway would be on it is like the press conferences and stuff, because after like the John Cena heel turn, you're gonna go say how you organize the heel turn.
But then
Stuff like
Cena
that,
also
like,
still
rubs me
played
the-
into the character by just not speaking, dropping the mic, and then he goes ahead and blasts our truth at this one. So it kind of goes to both
back
extents.
into your point. Yeah, it goes to your point, like where they kind of say it, but they still will blur the lines in the press conference. So
The Rock
because
was
sometimes-
exposing the nature of the sport by acknowledging that it's not real, and he was revealing backstage information, the literal definition of breaking kayfabe.
It's actually a good idea sometimes that they say this because some wrestling fans are crazy because if you look at stan fan bases, like they actually think they're feuding with each other and they'll go after a wrestler. like Seth Rollins has been attacked, like what happened to like Sonya Deville, people like that. It's scary out there. And like these wrestling fans are nuts where you need to tell them the shit isn't real. It's
Exactly.
scripted.
No, and that's the
And that's
thing.
another
You know,
take on that.
The Rock was breaking character on TV, and fans just couldn't accept it because it went against everything that he presented us the year before that we loved with the Final Boss heel version of Dwayne Johnson. It was perfect because it was
Which is
blended with
arguably the
reality.
best
He's got a
version
controlling
of The Rock.
stake. Yeah, he's got the controlling stake in WWE, and he's acting like he runs
It
everything.
made sense.
It fit perfectly. Everybody could buy into that as realism and kayfabe both blurred together. But then he comes out and now he's friends with Cody and he's, the face Rock because he's the PR guy and he's hugging Netflix execs and he's doing shots of tequila and now he's telling everybody that, wait, no, it all was planned and this has been long-term storytelling, even though he had nothing to do with the Mania stuff. Fans revolted because
you could have had that argument like when he was trying to get Cody Rhodes to sell his soul, like, oh, maybe the Raw Netflix January 6th debut was a part of trying to lure him into sell his soul to me and all that.
But it wasn't, and that's what we know now.
Yeah.
It could have been
that's what we
explained
know
as
now,
such,
but,
but
like,
the Rock screwed the fans, screwed us. And what were fans upset about? That he broke kayfabe. Fans cared that he was revealing the story in such a way and explaining the heel turn. And fans are upset that he didn't follow through with his bit of the narrative by being at WrestleMania or any build of it beforehand. He broke the story elements that he forced himself to be a part of. He had to be presented as, a strong element as such. And from there,
The Rock said
that's what happened.
On Pat McAfee's show, everything's a work.
Yeah.
So.
And, he's saying that, of course, but the commentators will break kayfabe on air. It doesn't. People say it doesn't exist anymore, but the pre-shows and press conferences aren't done in kayfabe, but like I said, fans cared about the Rock.
The press
not
conferences
being
I know
there.
sometimes, but like, do they do that like on air, like during the show or pre-show?
And I like that there's not a lot of kayfabe with everything. I like that there's a lot of just people that we can get into now. There are still
it kind
some
of makes
characters
it more
and
like a sport because like MLB isn't like scripted like UFC isn't, so it's kind of given like that sports vibe too. Like
the Mets don't have an Undertaker for a shortstop, and they don't have a guy that repos cars in the outfield. And that's the thing. Like it's. Maybe previous jobs, you never know, but not currently.
You're not gonna have a Mets player giving a stunner to his manager because he didn't
like the call. Yeah, exactly, and whatnot. So we were okay to accept the story of The Rock, being there to turn John. We wanted to know, was it a Hollywood elite role? Was it going to be as planned out as Sith had booked it all the way to SummerSlam, adding so many people to this faction that it would turn your head sideways? Or was it just a moment of ego on display from Dwayne Johnson? And that's what it turned out to be. And the fans revolted against it, not because of the story, because of him.
The Rock has a big ego problem, by the way. It's actually concerning.
And WWE has a big Rock problem. As we discussed on, Guilty or Guilt-Free, we said The Rock was guilty for indeed.
He's going to make them go rock bottom,
Yes, indeed. Pun intended. It's just, it's been, a bit incredulous at times. I think people go ahead and get a bit preachy and a little bit vitriolic, but as hyperbolic as I sound here, I don't feel like kayfabe is dead.
Here's the
I don't.
thing. Like, I think, like, if you believe, you believe. If you don't want kayfabe to die for you personally, then don't go watch the show they're gonna put out about like behind the scenes, like,
exactly,
the writers' room and all that. Don't watch it then.
I know it shouldn't be. Oh well, then just don't watch. But you have that option if it's something that you're not going to enjoy. If it's something that you don't really care for, then hey,
and appreciate the wrestlers that want to stay in character for you. Don't say, oh, they're rude to their fans. No, they're not being rude to you. Like if Dominic calls you an idiot at his meet and greet, idiot means hello and you're cool kind of thing. Like it's a translated word for
yes. You gotta add
I
some
healed
modern
the
lingo in there, and unless you got some chicken tendies, he's probably not going to be too
yeah
nice. But
yeah, which
again,
is
like you
fine.
said,
Like
you've got
I like
people
that
living
stuff.
up to their namesake. They're keeping kayfabe alive, and fans want that
Appreciate
from
those
meet and
wrestlers.
greets. Absolutely, they want the Joe Hendry that suddenly appears. They want the Undertaker that's rolling his eyes. They want the magic of it all. Fans
Like
love the
like
Fiend. They
I
like
know
the Wyatt Six.
Rhea Ripley fans are like the scariest fan base, by the way. Like they get mad at you for anything. They're actually scary people to interact with, by the way. I
If
like
they
Rhea
hear that,
Ripley,
they're
but
going to be
her
mad at you
fan.
again. So be careful.
I know. So you've probably seen me interact with them on Twitter. Holy shit, they're scary. They're gonna be mad at me again, no doubt.
They are a strong
But
bunch. They do love them
like
some Rhea.
they get so triggered because like Liv and Dom will go on an interview and say, "Who's your favorite person?" Oh, my girlfriend, Liv Morgan. Like, oh, my daddy, Dom. Like, obviously, we know they're not a real couple, but they want to keep
Yeah,
that in your mind, the
they're not
illusion that
kissing,
they
they're
are.
not embracing each other in such a way. They do like, Eskimo and nose kiss type stuff, little snuggles in front of the camera.
Yeah,
They're not
which is
there
fun
making out with each
because
other because he's married and she's, it's people have relationships. It's all make believe. And that's what I appreciate in those aspects.
obviously in interviews they're going to say each other to keep the illusion of them being a couple,
Yeah.
but we know they're not.
But they also
like,
don't have to either. They could be completely against mentioning any type of thing,
Which
but
Tom
real
also
life.
has done, like said, like my wife is completely fine with.
Yeah. And
Like
he's done interviews with his wife. They're few and far between, but she's been, asked questions, and especially during, and if they don't have a name already, I think Rhea's fans should be called Mommy's Maniacs. I like that one. Kind of sums them up,
Have you seen them? Like I like Rhea, but they're actually like
They're like sharks. They see water and they all swarm. I'm telling you.
Oh yeah, fucking.
It's a special bunch.
Can we say that word? I know it's not politically correct, but there's a word to describe them, but
hey,
I don't want to get your show.
I'm telling you, there's a few words, but
restarted is what. Oh,
aren't we all?
I'll say that. Fair enough.
I enjoy being able to keep kayfabe alive in my mind nowadays. I like being able to play along. I love the supernatural and the spooky and creepy. I love horror movies and horror elements in my wrestling. You can also go too far, like they did with The Fiend, and I think a lot of that was unfortunately because of the pandemic and not having fans, that they really overplayed their hands. They burnt him to a crisp and did all that crazy shit just to have Alexa turn on him at Mania. It was very underwhelming. And then he was let go, and then he came back, and then he had one match with LA Knight, and he passed away. So we didn't get any more of that. So being able to see some of that continue with his brother, with Wyatt Six, people knew realistically, like, oh shit, this story is really cool. His brother's really
which
gone.
is very unfortunate. Like, just sad,
Yeah, but all those people are dealing with the loss of Bray, of Brody, of people in their lives. So it brought them together as a family of their own. And you're like, oh, look, the realism blended with the macabre and horror elements, and adding the scary stuff and the interviews.
And family means a lot to them now. So their whole shtick is like, if you turn on your family.
All majority of fans have talked about since Alexa came back at the Rumble is, when is she going to be with everybody that's in the Wyatt Six? When is she going to be the new? People want to see the kayfabe and the story stay alive. So, like I said, I really think it all has just developed into something that people maybe have a hard time accepting, but it is still alive. It's just done in such a way that you have to be willing to play along.
They're like it's two worlds, I think.
And to Venn diagram more. They have a merging point in the middle where everything kind of connects, and I think that's where we are at this point in time. The world of realism and the world of kayfabe have merged together, and this is the result. That's why we have, the LFG tough enough type shows of showing a talent work their way up the ranks to try and become an actual star on the shows. And then we see people from, WWID contracts now as their personal selves go to NXT with a name change and become this, great star and work their ways up. Like Obafemi, he was in the ID system and, or the Performance Center, he was from that crowd, and they brought him in, and look at him now. We have that. So
Amazing.
the
right?
realism is
Almost
there,
on me.
but you also,
Fucking great.
exactly. But you also can fall in line and love the character too. He's doing a great job on that front. So again, I think both have
Right.
blended in such a way that kayfabe's not dead. It's just evolved. Cody, my friend, thank you very much for the one-off podcast today. Let the people know where they can find you, bud.
You can find me over on my Twitter at Judgment Day Era, and you can find me over on my Instagram at Cody_Onidi_316.
Thank you very much. And of course, you guys can find me on Rumble, on Instagram, on Twitter at Countdown Ended. And then you would, of course, not be here if you didn't know where to find me. But please subscribe, hit the like button, turn that bell on, because we're going to be a lot of live shows coming up. A lot. We've got TNA this coming Friday. This Saturday is Saturday night's main event. Sunday is WWE NXT Battleground and Double or Nothing. That's going to be a lot to cover. We're going to be live quite a bit this week, so make sure you're hitting that bell, hitting the like button, and I appreciate you all hanging out. But for now, myself and Cody are out. Stay sexy.